we've invited you all to this webinar today to provide details on the National Park Service Road-Based Tour Commercial Use Authorization, or as we call it, CUA requirements, and changes to the entrance fee structure for commercial tours that take effect later this year. So today's webinar is being jointly presented by the National Park Service CUA program and the Recreation Fee program. We have Samantha Towery, the National Park Service CUA coordinator, and Chris Williamson, the National Recreation Fee program manager, on our call today. Due to the large number of people on this webinar, we have all participants in the listen-only mode. At the end of the presentation, we're going to provide an email address that has been set up to receive your CUA and entrance fee questions. So our goal for today's webinar is to help provide you in the commercial tour industry with the details you need to plan for the new commercial use authorization and entrance fee requirements. So this is the second webinar that we have done for industry, and we do plan to share additional details over the next few months. We are going to post a PDF of this slide presentation in the same location where you found the link to today's webinar on our nps.gov CUA page for your reference. In addition, we're going to be posting a frequently asked questions document later today. We've already received quite a few questions from all of you out there, and we've created this document that should be really useful. So we plan to post that after the webinar. Okay, so today we're going to explain how the commercial tour entrance fee structure will be changing on October 1st. And this is at all National Park Service sites that charge an entrance fee. We will have changes on October 1st. We will describe also the National Park Service CUA requirements and changes that will be effective on October 1st, 2019, including how CUA management fees are going to be collected at all NPS sites by the National Park Service. So to get us started, I want to turn it over to Samantha Towery so she can share some history of commercial fees and CUAs in the National Park Service. Here's Sam.
Thanks, Sheila, and thanks for joining us all today. Good afternoon, everybody. You'll see on this slide that really the CUA program in the National Park Service has evolved over time. So previous to 1997, we issued what we called CULs, or commercial use licenses, for any commercial activity that was not under a concessions contract. And then in the mid-1990s, we switched and we started issuing what we called incidental business permits, or IBPs. The IBPs were pretty similar to our current CUA program, but there was no limit on the number of IBPs that we could issue. So related to the content today, just prior to us implementing the commercial tour entrance fee schedule in 1998, and that's the current fee schedule that we use at entrance stations, the associate director issued a memo that directed all the parks that were going to charge that commercial entrance fee schedule to not charge for road-based tour IBPs, or CUAs. So that memo is why most parks right now don't issue and charge for road-based commercial tour CUAs, and you know, why we're getting everybody on board and making sure we're all complying with current legislation now. The same year that that memo came out, it was actually superseded by the 1998 Concessions Management Improvement Act, and that act directed us to issue CUAs to all commercial entities, and that included road-based commercial tours, and also to collect a reasonable fee, at least cost recovery, for those CUAs. So let's go ahead and skip ahead to 2015, and in that year we started having in-person conversations with representatives from the industry. Those included NTA and ABA. We also attended a bunch of different conferences that year and in subsequent years to continue the discussion. I think we participated in, 20-plus calls and different meetings, and it all sort of led us to this point. In 2017, we kicked off a public comment process, and in that public comment process, we introduced the idea of standardizing the CUA requirements, or I should say we formally introduced the idea of standardizing the CUA requirements and fees, and we also introduced a seasonally based entrance fee. because of the comments that we received and then also some internal analysis that we conducted, we sort of got rid of that seasonally based entrance fee, and then we announced the new fees, the per person commercial entrance fees, and all the CUA requirements and fees in April of 2018. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris really quick, and she's going to go ahead and start talking to you guys about that per person commercial entrance fee.
Okay, thank you, Sam. So I am Chris Williamson, and I manage the Recreation Fee Program for the National Park Service. I want to provide a bit of history also. So since 1998, at park sites that charge per vehicle entrance fees, commercial tours have been charged a flat rate entrance fee based on the capacity of the vehicle that is used to transport the passengers. And so we've had prices for 1 to 6 passenger capacity vehicles, 7 to 15 passenger capacity vehicles, 16 to 25 passenger capacity vehicles, and then vehicles that have a passenger capacity of 26 or more. So this vehicle-based entrance fee structure for commercial tour operators has not changed in over 20 years. So a large number of parks charge commercial tours the same fee today to enter a park that they charged in 1998. For example, a large tour bus has paid the same flat rate of $300 to enter Grand Teton National Park for the last 20 years, while over that same time period, the private vehicle entrance fee has changed. So at park sites that charge per person entrance fees only, commercial tour operators have been charged the per person entrance fee, and these fees have changed a little bit over time as well. So there are some variations to the flat rate vehicle capacity or per person fee models within the National Park Service. For example, Grand Canyon National Park has a slightly different entrance fee structure for certain tours that enter the park. So I think it's also important to note that the National Park Service currently only has 112 sites, so 112 national park sites that charge an entrance fee out of a total of 419 national park sites. So next slide, please. Okay, so like Sam mentioned, we've been talking about updating this 20-year-old commercial entrance fee schedule for a number of years, including conversations with the commercial tour industry representatives. And then in the fall of 2017, we conducted an official civic engagement exercise which allowed the public to comment on a peak season fee rate proposal, taking many factors into consideration. As Sam mentioned, the National Park Service announced in April of 2018 updated entrance fee rates for all parks that charge entrance fees, a change to the commercial tour fee schedule, and a new CUA road-based commercial tour CUA. Let me get my words in the right order here. New CUA road-based tour requirements. Due to the commitment that the National Park Service made to the commercial tour industry, the implementation date of October 1st, 2019 was set in order for the commercial tour industry to have 18 months notice, essentially to prepare for the changes that were going to impact them. And that's the commitment we made, was to provide an 18-month notice. So starting on October 1st of 2019, parks that charge a vehicle-based entrance fee will no longer use the flat rate vehicle capacity model, that commercial tour fee schedule that we were talking about earlier. At all parks, commercial tour operators will be charged a per person entrance fee for each person in their group that is 16 or over. There will be no charge for tour drivers and tour guide operators, and the National Park Service charges entrance fees only to those that are 16 and older, so that's going to remain consistent with how the commercial tour operators will be charged. So again, the entrance fee will just be charged to those that are 16 and older. This change will allow the National Park Service to charge for the actual number of passengers in a vehicle, which many tour companies have requested, as it allows tour operators to plan their tour expenses more easily. So just as an example, when a tour arrives at a park, the driver or tour guide should be ready to provide an accurate account of the passengers on the bus. So the count needs to include how many passengers are 16 and older and how many are 15 and younger. There will be times that National Park Service staff will need to manually verify the number of passengers on board, but that's not going to be a typical practice that happens every time someone pulls up to an entrance station or walks into a visitor center to pay the entrance fee. So national park sites are divided into one of 4 groups for entrance fee purposes. On the slide, we have posted the established per-person entrance fees for each of the 4 park groups. So we've got $10, $15, $15, and $20. Since some parks may not have increased their fees to these rates yet, there may still be some parks that are operating under an older per-person fee on October 1st, but all parks should, however, be in line, with the exception of a few, with these rates by January of 2020. So there is also a link on this slide that we've included that leads to an NPS.gov entrance fee page, and it lists or has posted the entrance fee rates for most parks. So that information, I think, there will be very helpful for you in planning your visits. Next slide, please. Okay, so what about passes? So when we mention passes, we're talking about passes that are used for entrance to our parks that charge an entrance fee. So these include interagency annual, senior, access, military, 4th grade, and volunteer passes. Also, many park sites have their own park-specific annual passes. So as we transition to this per-person fee for all road-based commercial tour operators, passes will not be accepted for commercial entrance fees. This is in line with what is listed on the back of the interagency pass, and we have posted an example here on the slide at the back of the interagency senior pass, and there's a statement that's it used to be highlighted and underlined, and now it's a square, but it says that the pass is valid only for private, non-commercial vehicle entry. So we will continue this with, following this policy with the commercial tour operators. So there is going to be a slight change related to passes for parks that primarily charge only per-person fees. These parks have charged per-person entrance fees to commercial tour operators in the past, and in some cases have accepted passes. So past guidance was to allow passes to be used to cover the entrance for these type of groups, but starting in October, that will no longer be allowed. So essentially in the past, at many per-person sites where you park a bus out in a parking lot and you walk into a visitor center and then you pay the entrance fee. We had in the past, we accepted passes in that scenario because we were not really differentiating between anyone who had parked in the parking lot and was walking through the door. And so everyone was charged per person and passes were accepted. But now we really need to be able to account separately for the commercial visitors from the non-commercial visitors. So that is, again, going to be a change with these per-person parks. So commercial tours will need to pay the per-person fee for each of their customers, and passes will not be accepted. Again, I just wanted to note, too, that once the entrance fee is paid for a group, it is valid for re-entry for that same group for whatever the length of stay is at that particular park site. Next, Samantha is going to describe the CUA program and requirements a little bit more, so let's turn it back over to her.
Thanks, Chris. So, I think before we dive into this, I think it's just important to explain exactly what a CUA is. So, as Sheila pointed out earlier, it's short for Commercial Use Authorization, and it allows an individual, group, company, or other entity to conduct commercial activities and provide specific visitor services within a national park unit. And so that national park unit includes parks, historic sites, battlefields, basically any area managed by the National Park Service. So federal law mandates that we, the National Park Service, issue CUAs only for commercial activities and visitor services that are determined to be an appropriate use of the park, that will only have minimal impact or less on park resources and park values, and that are consistent with park purpose, management plans, policies, regulations. So just remember that all those CUAs authorize commercial services in park areas. They're not concession contracts. They also shouldn't be confused with special use permits. So you all are probably familiar with special use permits, but with the exception of the sale of printed material, special use permits, or SUPs, never authorize commercial activity. Go ahead and switch slides, Sheila. Thanks. So the requirement for CUAs is found in Federal Regulation 36 CFR 5.3. And 5.3 states it's illegal to conduct business in a park area without a permit, contract, or other written agreement. So the Concessions Management Improvement Act, which I mentioned earlier, that came out in 1998, that gives the NPS the authority to issue CUAs to allow business operations. And it also requires us to collect at least cost recovery for CUA administration and management. So kind of think of it like our regulations, or 36 CFR 5.3, requires the permit, and then the 1998 Act tells us, the National Park Service, how to manage that permit system. Next slide. So the Park Service issues CUAs to manage a huge variety of commercial visitor services. So depending on the park, that could include anything from guided mountaineering or backpacking, horseback riding, road-based commercial tours, scuba diving. There's so many, it would probably take me 10 minutes to list all of the types of CUAs that we issue. There's just way too many to name. Just to kind of give you an idea of the program size and scope, in 2017, we issued over 6,000 CUAs, and the CUA holders, through the submission of the annual CUA report, reported to us that they brought in over $500 million in total from park-based or park-dependent operations. Now, out of that $500 million, the Park Service collected less than 0.5% for us to manage the program. So of all those different types of CUAs that we issue, the road-based commercial tour CUAs that we're talking about today and that directly affect all of you are the only type of CUAs that have standard fees and a standard fee collection process. Next slide. Thanks, Sheila. So I think it's also important for everyone to understand how we define road-based commercial tour. So we define it as one or more persons traveling on an improved roadway on an itinerary that someone has sold for leisure or recreational purposes. Road-based commercial tours provide no other services except those incidental to road-based travel in a National Park Service area. So that includes onboard interpretation and incidental stops at visitor centers or restaurants, wayside exhibits, the bathrooms, that kind of thing. Now, our guidance clearly states that a park superintendent may allow minor, and that's an important word, minor additional services like short day hikes. And think, you know, when I say short day hike, think like a walk in a developed area. And again, it's the superintendent's discretion whether or not they want to allow those minor additional services. So if you want to offer those, you need to make sure that you're talking to the park CUA coordinator to see what the superintendent at that park has decided. Now, it's also possible that a company may need more than one type of CUA if you do want to offer those additional services, or if those services are not considered minor. So think, for instance, like maybe you, a road-based commercial tour company, wants to offer those types of tours, but you also want to offer backpacking trips. And I realize that that's kind of a unique model. I have no idea if that exists, but if it does or something similar to that, then you're going to need a road-based commercial tour CUA, and you're also going to need a guided backpacking CUA, totally unrelated service types. Also, transportation-only services like taxis or shuttles, they don't meet that definition that I went over because they're not prepackaged. Those are sort of on-demand services, not prepackaged. So remember that even though those types of companies don't meet the definition of road-based commercial tour, parks may still issue transportation CUAs for those types of services if there's a need to manage those services, if they actually need to control the commercial vehicle traffic. Again, the only type of CUA that we've standardized the fees and the fee collection for are road-based commercial tours. So for transportation CUAs, we have sort of no standard fee collection process or standard fees. So you'll need to, visit the nps.gov CUA website, and you can use the map feature to access individual park CUA coordinator contact information. So you can contact that park if you're a transportation provider to sort of understand the requirements. Next slide, Sheila. So the way that we collect the standard $5 per person CUA management fee really depends on whether or not that park charges an entrance fee. So for parks that are charging that per person entrance fee, the $5 per person CUA management fee is actually included in that per person commercial entrance fee. So kind of think of it like this. If a park per person commercial entrance fee is $15, $10 of that is the entrance fee and $5 of that is the CUA management fee. We've just included it all in one bundle to make it easier for you all to pay the fees. So you'll still, you'll pay that total of $15 at the park entrance, and then we sort of split it apart on the back end, but you don't really see that. Next page. So what happens when the visitors that you bring to the park are under 16? So Chris mentioned this earlier, and you all are probably very aware of it already, but we don't collect entrance fees for visitors that are 15 and under. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to collect a CUA management fee for those people. So when we created this slide, and actually during the last webinar, and Chris, please jump in if I'm not explaining this clearly or if you have something to add. But originally what we wanted to do was have you pay the $5 per person CUA management fee when you submitted your annual report at the end of the operating season. What we're considering now and what we're probably likely to do is allow you to pay the $5 per person CUA management fee for those visitors that are 15 and under when you go through the park entrance. I think we recognize, based on some feedback that we received through the CUA dedicated email address and a few calls that we received, that it would be easier for you all to do it then than have to worry about paying these fees at the end of the year. You can sort of ignore this slide a little bit. I mean, we're still going to collect a CUA management fee for those under 15, or under 16, but we're going to do it at the park entrance station for those parks that have entrance stations and charge that per person entrance fee. And actually, in the frequently asked questions document that we're going to post later today, this is further clarified. So I encourage you to read those questions and reach out again through the email address if you have additional questions. But I think it's pretty clear when you read that what our intent is and sort of the method of fee collection. Sheila, switch slides. Thank you. So as I just mentioned, at parks that don't collect an entrance fee, that $5 per person CUA management fee still has to be paid, and it will be paid when you submit the annual CUA report at the end of the operating season. So these are for parks that don't charge an entrance fee. You're going to be paying the $5 per person CUA management fee for everybody, including those 15 and under, when you submit that annual CUA report. Now, just remember that that annual CUA report is not specific to the road-based commercial tour operators. So every single CUA holder, no matter what type of CUA they hold, has to submit that annual CUA report. It's a required submission, and we've incorporated in that requirement in the standard CUA conditions that are part of the CUA application and then the actual authorization as well. It's also part of the OMB approved information collection process, and we go through that every 3 years. What you can do is visit the external CUA website, and the link is at the end of the slide presentation, I believe, but there's a downloadable annual report. So you can download that, take a look at it, see what questions are on that, and know what sort of expectations we have for you when you report at the end of the year. Okay, next slide. So this is pretty exciting, and I think most of you are probably already aware that we're doing this, but we're going to soon move to an online CUA platform, and what that online platform will allow is just digital application submission, application and management fee payments, and remember those management fees will be for parks that don't charge the per person entrance fee, and they'll also allow you to submit that required annual report that I just talked about. So we're currently developing that, and we expect it's going to be in place by October 1st, 2019. And we've also identified that the road-based commercial tour industry is going to be one of our platform test groups. So we're on track to streamline the application for you before October 1st. Now, keep in mind that sometimes contracting delays are out of our hands. So you will need to be prepared to submit applications using our current process, and that's through each park. But we're going to obviously continually communicate with you and with park staff if a delay does occur. And I'm not expecting a delay to occur. I just want to put that out there because they do happen. But we will keep in touch with you and let you know about the status of the online system. Next page. You know, just a little bit more about that platform, and I mentioned it before, but it's going to allow you to fill out one application, and it's going to allow you to apply to multiple parks at one time using that one application. So the application will it'll sort of feed into your user profile, and then, you know, how I envision it is like an interactive map. So after you submit all your information through the online application, then you just indicate what service you want to provide, and then you select the parks where you want to visit. And so from there, you would just simply accept the park-specific CUA conditions, because each park is allowed to create and require you to accept specific CUA conditions at the park. And that's because our parks, and when I say parks, remember I mean monuments, I mean battlefields, I mean everything. They're all very unique. So parks do have to have the ability to create specific conditions. But then the system itself will just digitally submit your application to the park CUA coordinator, and from there everything is done through the system, so there's not going to be any paperwork anymore. So again, you'll also be able to submit that required annual report at the end of the year and pay any associated CUA management fees, that $5 per person CUA management fees for non-fee parks when you submit that annual report. And, you know, I just want to, again, tell you that we're going to be providing a lot of information about the online system over the next few months, and we'll be doing that through sort of a similar system like we're doing today, this WebEx platform, and we'll also be doing some user training in the coming months. So you're going to be fully prepared and hopefully as excited as we are that when you're ready to submit applications and when the Park Service is ready for full implementation, that everybody is on board and we all know how the system works. Next slide, Sheila. So just to sort of cap off the end of the CUA portion of the presentation, I just wanted to go over a few of the frequently asked questions that we get. And these are also included in that FAQ document that we'll be loading on the CUA web page later today. But you know, how do you all prove that you have a CUA? So, like all CUA holders, you are responsible for providing your guide with a copy of the CUA, and no, you don't have to print off all 8 pages. You can just print off the first page and provide that to your guide. Remember, if you do that, you do have to make sure your guide is aware of and has read the CUA conditions, including the park-specific conditions. But what the guide will have to do is actually, you know, hand that over at the park entrance. The CUAs that are going to be generated by the online platform are going to clearly state that it's a road-based commercial tour CUA, so there'll be no questions at the park gate. And then, you know, obviously have your guide keep that document on hand, because as they're out walking around and maybe doing some of these, you know, like I talked about earlier, these short day walks or day hikes, park staff may request to see that CUA. And if they do, the guide should be able to provide that. So parks can also, you know, continue to develop their own ID systems, and some parks are currently using cards or they use vehicle stickers. One park is going to be piloting like a QR code. We don't know how that's going to work yet, but it may be something that we integrate later into this online platform. But the specific requirements for identification, if there are any outside of, you know, just providing that first page of your CUA, are going to be included in the special park conditions of the CUA application. So you will be aware of those at the time of application. So what if you show up without a CUA? I just want to assure everybody that our goal is to never turn away park visitors. We don't want to do that ever. And we also understand that there's going to be some confusion when we implement these new requirements. So what we've done is developed what we're calling a non-permitted entry process. And that will allow you a short-term park entrance. So if you show up without a CUA to a park at the entrance station, you're going to be asked to fill out a form, this non-permitted entry form, or you can even provide a business card, however the park wants to do it. You will pay the $300 application fee when you show up without a CUA. But what the park staff will do is they're going to go ahead and send that form or your business card to the CUA office. So you will need to, use the online system just, to quickly apply for a CUA at that point. But we're just rest assured that we're not going to kick anybody out right away. I also want to mention, like I said, you're going to pay that $300 application fee if you show up without a CUA. That's the only time you'll have to pay that application fee. We're not going to ask you to pay it again. But you'll also pay the per-person commercial entrance fee at the park at the time as well. So I think the last question, let's see, are all parks required to issue and charge for road-based commercial tour CUAs? Yes, although we do realize that in a few cases, implementing that standard road-based commercial tour CUA process is really hard for parks, and that's usually due to the fact that they don't have the staff or they don't have an established CUA program. So because of that, we developed a waiver process, and parks can apply for a waiver to opt out of the standard CUA requirements and fees. So a couple of reasons that we allow that or allow them to request a waiver is, like I said, if park staff is too small, if they can't keep up with the CUA program, or in some cases, if just how the park is set up, like if it's a super urban interface park and they have no ability to manage everything, then we'll allow them to apply for a waiver. Now, the waiver is granted by the deputy director, so it's a pretty high standard for them to have to meet to be granted the waiver, and part of that is because we want to standardize the requirements across the agency. We don't want to confuse it any more than it already is. So that online system and then also our CUA website is going to provide information about what parks have been granted the waiver. So far, only one park has applied for and been granted a waiver, and that's Stones River, and that's in Tennessee, I believe. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Chris, and she's going to talk a little bit more about how we use the fees that we collect.
Okay, thank you, Sam. So we're just going to talk a little bit about how entrance and CUA management fees are used. And we feel that this is a relevant piece of information that we wanted to take this opportunity to share with you. And that is that entrance and CUA management fees are used to enhance the visitor experience at the park sites you visit and pay fees at. So at least 80% of the per-person entrance fees and 100% of the CUA fees that are paid will remain in the collecting park and be used on projects to enhance the visitor experience, such as improving parking lots, restrooms, roads, trails, new waysides, exhibits, etc. There's a great example on the slide here of a photo with a trail improvement project on the Fossil Discovery Trail in Big Bend National Park. So the National Park Service tries to highlight and share how fee dollars are used in the parks. There is a link on the slide. It's called Your Fee Dollars at Work, and it takes you to an nps.gov page that includes some more really good project examples for across various park sites, as well as a map with links to individual park sites that have their own Your Fee Dollar at Work pages. So I recommend checking those out and taking a look and seeing how the money that you are providing to the national park is being used. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sheila to close us out. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris and Sam. Okay, so I've got an additional information slide here. As you plan your trips to the parks, you may have additional questions since these are new requirements and we're changing some of the processes and creating this new online platform. So over the next few months, we're going to continue to provide updates on our Commercial Use Authorization or CUA website, and I just posted the link into the chat, so you can get it there if you haven't seen that before. That's the nps.gov website. And this is the best place to check if you have questions first. We are also going to be adding a frequently asked questions document here and a PDF of today's slides. We're going to do that later today. We'll get that posted. And on this slide, I've also added the entrance fees by park list, so you can easily find the per person entrance fee rate for the National Park Service site you plan to visit. And again, we've provided a link to the information on how our parks are using fee dollars to make park improvements. So thank you again for joining us today. I have posted a poll within WebEx, and we would really appreciate it if you could take just a minute or two to answer the 2 questions that we have. Your feedback is going to help us prepare additional training material on this subject over the coming months. As you all will have questions on this new platform or maybe some other specifics, give us some of your thoughts on this little poll I have. We've also set up an email address for you to send your CUA or entrance fee questions. And this email address is CUA_WASO@nps.gov. And we have taken questions that have already been submitted to this email address to create the frequently asked documents that we're going to post later today. Okay, so thank you, Sam and Chris, for providing details on the upcoming changes. Thank you, everyone. Oh, did you have some more?
Yeah, I just want to say, do you have a slide with the email address on it?
It's showing right now, I believe. So thank you. It says, please send to CUA_WASO@nps.gov. But I will actually I'm going to post that into chat. Also, good point, Chris.
Well, I think mine is delayed or something, so that slide's not showing on my screen. So, okay. But that's fine. Thanks.
Yep, and I put the email address in chat. All right. I think that's the end of our presentation. Just take a minute to do the poll if you haven't done it. Thanks for joining us today. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. Hey, Chris and Sheila, are you guys still on?
I think we need to hang up and recall in.
This is Lisa. And you might be, since we didn't have the operator, we would have had a post-conference. But yeah, you might, if you guys want to reconvene. And Sheila, are you going to close out the poll, or do you? Because I still see people responding to it. How long do you want to
can you? I put it for 10 minutes. So.
Okay. All right. I'll keep an eye on for it then. Close
so do we need to call back in with that leader code again? Is that what we need to do?
Well,
let me give you a different number. I'll put it all in chat.
Use your own private line. I'm not sure if everyone's hearing our conversation or not. So.
Yeah, I'm going to put a phone number in your chat, okay? So we can all call back in. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.